Good morning. The Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation will come to order. This morning we will be having a hearing on securing U.S. leadership in emerging compute technologies, or in other words, what do we do with the CHIPS and science money and the actual appropriations that we need to get to keep our competitive edge in compute science. So very distinguished panel here this morning to discuss this very important issue. I would like to welcome all of them. In August, the President signed the Bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act into law with historic commitment to U.S. technology leadership. This hearing is about ensuring what we do as a nation to keep that commitment by building the workforce needed to stay competitive in the most leading edge and consequential computational disciplines. Leading the world in computation grows the economy, creates new jobs, and keeps America safe. Computing helped put Americans on the moon, develop faster and stealthier planes, better weather forecasting, artificial intelligence for precision agriculture. That is why the CHIPS and Science Act was so focused on building America's computing capabilities. America knows that the new law invested more than $50 billion into chip manufacturing, and they already are seeing results. The groundbreakings and announcements in Ohio, Idaho, North Carolina, and even in my home state of Washington have all put manufacturing resurgence to a point of gaining steam. But just as important in the law is the focus on research and workforce development in 10 key technology areas. 4 of these areas, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, quantum science, and distributed ledger technologies, deal with improving computation. Job openings in these areas are soaring, but the number of workers definitely is not keeping pace. It is a crisis. That is why the CHIPS and Science Act authorized $13 billion for STEM education, including funds for nearly 40,000 scholarships, fellowships, and traineeships. That is why it has money for faculty hiring and training. And make no mistake, America's workforce shortages are serious, and failing to make these investments and failing to retain the talent from around the world is not an option. With 6 decades of AI development, computers now operate vehicles, translate languages, create art, help on the factory floor, and most of you know in this room are probably carrying AI technologies right now. But AI doesn't work alone, and it's far from perfect. AI must be trained by humans and must often be partnered with the human in doing the work, and that means we need a generation of AI literate workers. A recent Georgetown study supported that we will add 1 million AI jobs between 2019 and 2029. AI requires vast amounts of information and excellent data retrieval capabilities, which is one of the promises of distributed ledger technologies. But in the computer science, a foundational discipline for this technology, universities are turning away students because the supply of teachers isn't keeping up with demand. The country that combines the power of quantum computing with artificial intelligence could make an insurmountable leap forward in technology and rewrite the rules of the road for cybersecurity, for creating medical innovations, and saving thousands of lives in developing battlefield technologies. The nation faces a shortage of quantum talent, with fewer than 5% of U.S. PhDs in relevant fields focusing on quantum science. So the stakes are high. The international competition is mounting. Funding for CHIPS and science must not stop with the appropriations for chip manufacturing. America needs access to better chips, but it also needs the research and workforce to put those chips to use. So that is why I'm proud to have with us one of our witnesses, Dr. Albritton, who we'll hear from shortly. Washington is a leader in emerging computational technology. Seattle has the nation's 3rd largest AI workforce. The University of Washington is one of the nation's top institutions for AI. In the Spokane region, home to more than 7,000 farms and ranches, WSU leads the Institute on Agriculture AI with a focus on AI-enabled workforce, and companies like Amazon, Microsoft, T-Mobile, and Starbucks are applying distributed ledger technologies to telecommunications and supply chain. And we are building the quantum workforce through the efforts like the University of Washington's Quantum X Institute, which is creating a graduate certificate program in quantum science. With the CHIPS and Science Act, I hope to see Washington continue to grow this leadership in developing a workforce. Each of these technologies will face challenges, But if America is to lead, we need to continue to lead in talent. So I look forward to hearing from the distinguished panel today. And I'll now turn to the ranking member for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me say, of all the legislation that you and I have worked shoulder to shoulder on, I can't think of anything more significant for the future of our country, and not only our economy, but also our national security, than the CHIPS and Science Act. And so thank you so much for being my partner in that regard, and for persuading the House and Senate to include the very significant additions that we made. Today's hearing on securing U.S. leadership in emerging technologies could not be more timely. The recently enacted CHIPS and Science Act provided critical investments and policy tools to advance American innovation in key technologies, including, as the chair said, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. The development of these emerging technologies is important, but also poses important questions for policymakers involving security, privacy, and other impacts on society. Today's witnesses play key roles in technology development and innovation. The chair is proud of witnesses from the state of Washington, and I am similarly delighted that Dr. Henry Jones is here, the Director of Research and Development and Scientific Entrepreneurship at the University of Southern Mississippi, and Mr. Trey Breckenridge, the Director of High Performance Computing at Mississippi State University. I look forward to hearing their thoughts on spreading the geography of innovation. When it comes to innovation, one of the most significant provisions that we were able to add, Madam Chair, is to spread the geography and avoid over-reliance on a handful of states and big universities. American leadership requires that we take advantage of the talent, expertise, and capabilities found throughout America. In that vein, I would appreciate our witnesses' perspectives on where the United States ranks regarding the development of these emerging technologies, particularly as compared to China, and what more should be done to secure a preeminent position. China and other nations are increasingly dominant in technology innovation, posing a massive threat not only to our economy, but as I said, to national security. There is no more important competition than the one for technological supremacy between the United States and China. Congress has recognized this fact and has taken the first step by passing the CHIPS and Science Act, which would position the United States to be a global leader once again. This law establishes a new directorate for technology innovation and partnerships at the NSF to accelerate the process of translating basic research into technology development for commercial use and making America more competitive globally. Geographic diversity is vital to American innovation, and enlisting the talent and expertise of STEM researchers nationwide is an important priority in the CHIPS and Science Act. The law guarantees that EPSCoR, a program designed to stimulate competitive research in 25 predominantly rural states, will receive 20% of all R&D funding from the NSF, up from the current 13%. This will go a long way toward leveraging the whole of America's technological expertise in this global contest. Make no mistake, ensuring that America leads the world in tech is good for our economy and national security, and it is also good for the cause of freedom, stability, openness, and our democratic values around the world. With the right vision and priorities, we in Congress can make sure the 21st century is another American century. So I look forward to hearing from our distinguished witnesses, and I thank the chair.
Thank you, Senator Wicker, and thank you for your leadership on the EPSCoR issue particularly. It was something that we spent a lot of time on, and I firmly believe, I saw this morning that Steve Case has a book, The Rise of the Rest, and I think with the Intel investment in Ohio and what we're doing, I don't want to steal Dr. Albritton's testimony, but I think she's going to tell us she's originally from Louisiana, and I think that's the point, that we have talent all throughout the United States of America, and what do we do to better unleash that? And hopefully today's hearing will be a very poignant point to our appropriators that we have to get the rest of this right. But now I'm going to turn.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if because of your statement, sales of Mr. Case's book shoot through the roof, the Case family will be able to have Christmas this year.
I'm pretty sure he
You've
could have
helped
it
him.
anyway, but I probably would have had him come and, this is a hard subject because it's not hard, it's distributed generation. But when we were definitely in the negotiations, we spent a lot of time on this for a lot of different reasons. And some institutions who are already making R&D contributions, it's hard, but I think we got it right, and I think that we're going to move forward, and I think we're going to see the dividend of that. So thank you for your leadership. Senator Hickenlooper from the subcommittee is going to make an opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank all of you for schlepping out here and spending your better part of a day with us. It's exciting to be part of such an impressive group. The recently passed CHIPS and Science Act really is a massive investment in our country's future. I was proud to be a conferee on the Bipartisan Innovation and Competition Conference. Part of that, the drive that R&D receives is what helps our economy grow. It improves our public health. It strengthens our national defense. It affects us in almost every manner possibly. When I was a kid, there was a movie called Being There, written by a guy named Chertsey Kaczynski, who Chance the gardener turned out to be an expert in the economy. And basically, he was rather simple-minded, but his metaphor he used for everything was back to the garden, and whether it had the nutrients. The garden is an ecosystem. Well, I think what the CHIPS bill does is invest $200 billion into our scientific ecosystem. And just like the garden and Being There, it's that the nutrients and the diversity of what's in that ecosystem is crucial to its success. We need to grow and diversify our skilled workforce, making sure we have pathways other than the traditional four-year degree. We have to increase manufacturing and innovation in every part of the nation, as the Madam Chair was just saying. Steve Case and others have begun that process of looking into rural areas all across America and finding out how do we stimulate innovation everywhere. We're in a fierce rivalry, a fierce competition with China, Iran, a number of countries, and we need everybody on deck. We were thrilled to see last week that the Senate confirmed Dr. Prabhakar to head the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. She's going to play a pivotal role in implementing CHIPS and Science by developing the National Science and Technology Strategy, and perhaps more importantly, coordinating the efforts across all the federal agencies and with the different offices of the White House. I think what we're doing here today is really discussing the future of computing to a large extent. We have three focuses today that showcase what we can already achieve, but also what we will be able to do in the near future. One, artificial intelligence, AI, has the power to automate complex processes and improve our efficiency in every sector of our economy. As more and more businesses incorporate AI into their operations, we need to accelerate that integration. We must ensure that these systems are transparent and as much as possible free from bias. I applaud the National AI Initiative Office's efforts to gather broad public input and to convene experts from government, academia, and industry to make sure we get off on the right path. Second, quantum information science, QIS, is an advanced field, which I'm proud to say, a deep history in Colorado. It will transform the future of computing and let us run simulations with staggering speed. Colorado's own Cold Quanta, Dr. Suter's here, it's on the cutting edge, someone would say the bleeding edge of this computing revolution. NIST has a partnership with CU Boulder to advance quantum technologies through their joint institute, the JILA, including world record accurate atomic clocks. A further partnership with CU Boulder, NIST, and Front Range companies has joined together to form the CU Qubit, I did not come up with that acronym, Qubit initiative, which is going to help accelerate our growing quantum ecosystem in Colorado, and I think in a similar way we will accelerate ecosystems around the country. Third, after quantum information science, is this distributed ledger technology, DLT, often implemented as blockchains, is more popularly known as blockchains, can improve security of financial transactions, support innovations in data privacy, all kinds of implementations, healthcare just being one. A major DLT innovation hub is located in Wyoming, the home of Space and Science Subcommittee's ranking member, Senator Lummis. Today, I look forward to discussing important topics for all these technologies that are so important to Colorado and to the nation. What barriers should we break down to make sure that we do grow a skilled STEM workforce in all these fields? What are the guardrails we need to make sure we create to ensure these technologies are developed transparently, used ethically, and benefit everyday lives of all Americans? With the springboard created by the Historic Chips and Science Act, how do we ensure that the United States remains the global gold standard for innovation in each of these fields? So I thank all of you for joining us in delving into these issues, and I yield to the chair.
Thank you. I don't see Senator Lummis here or online, but if she does arrive and wants to give us an opening statement as the ranking member of the subcommittee, we will definitely look forward to hearing her comments. We'll now turn to the witnesses. I want to welcome Dr. Nancy Albritton, Dean of the College of Engineering at the University of Washington, the Frank and Julie Jungers Dean. I also want to welcome Dr. Jack Clark, co-founder of Anthropic, Mr. William Breckenridge III, Director of High Performance Computing and High Performance Computing Collaborative, Mississippi State University. Mr. Steve Lupin is joining us remotely. He is the Director of the Center for Blockchain and Digital Initiatives at the University of Wyoming College of Business. Dr. Bob, is it Sutter? Suter, Dr. Bob Suter, Vice President, Corporate Development of Cold Quanta, and Dr. Henry Jones, Director of Research and Development and Scientific Entrepreneurship, the University of Southern Mississippi. So welcome to all of you. We'll start with you, Dean Albritton.
Good morning, Chairman Cantwell and Ranking Member Wicker, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you, Senator Cantwell, my senator, for the opportunity to testify about the value and continued importance of our nation investing in emerging computing technologies. As noted, I'm the Dean of the University of Washington College of Engineering, and the three technologies the committee is focusing on today are areas where the University of Washington is making significant contributions. Indeed, our faculty lead multiple large, multi-institutional national science foundation awards to advance the potential of AI, machine learning, and data science, all while training the next generation of workers and innovators. As we've already noted, Congress took a bold step with the CHIP and Science Act. I'm encouraged by this step. A sustained federal investment in these programs is essential for our nation to maintain its leadership on this fierce global landscape. But it's also important to leverage collaborative opportunities between government, academia, and industry, and to build a workforce that reflects the rich diversity of our nation. This morning, I'll focus my comments on the impact of investment in quantum information science, starting with an example and its promise. As we all know, Hurricane Ian has made landfall in our southern states, and as noted, I'm a native of Louisiana. I keenly understand the toll that hurricanes have on a community and also the hardship of rebuilding. Thankfully, though, forecasting models developed by NOAA, NASA, and the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory help us predict the path and intensity of these hurricanes. It's a tremendous improvement from my childhood, But just imagine if we could prepare for storms with a much higher degree of certainty. Theoretically, a full-scale quantum computer can perform weather forecasting with high accuracy by handling vast amounts of data in seconds, saving lives and reducing property damage. In the 1980s, classical computing and personal computers changed the world. But now advances in quantum information science promise major breakthroughs in communications, computing, and simulation. Just as quantum science has enabled groundbreaking technologies such as GPS, MRI, lasers for healthcare applications, the realization of quantum information science will fundamentally change the way that we live and work. But now's the time to accelerate federal investment to maintain a competitive edge. Across the globe, growing numbers of universities, including the University of Washington, have established major quantum information programs. And the competition for students, researchers, faculty, and funding is intense, as is industry hiring. The new quantum information initiatives in the US and around the world all have the same goal, not to miss this window to lead in this area. But no country is better positioned to emerge in the top cohort than the US is with its partnerships between academia, government, and industry. At the University of Washington, though, the lack of critical quantum information science capabilities, particularly those associated with the large cost of implementation and maintenance, hampers our impact in this growing field. Another challenge to industry growth is the shortage of equipped and diverse workforce. It's already difficult to fill skilled STEM job openings, and as quantum computing investments grow, competition for skilled worker intensifies and is an unsustainable demand. At the University of Washington alone, student demand far exceeds capacity in most of our STEM programs, forcing us to turn away excellent students while our nation demands a skilled workforce. America's research universities stand ready to partner with you to provide leadership, research, and workforce education. I ask that you continue to sustain and increase federal funding, particularly in those science agencies that will enable us to remain a global quantum information leader, but more specifically, increase federal investment in workforce development and education, and accessible quantum testbeds and quantum cloud computing, and high-risk engineering and science research, and more fundamental quantum information research, but also an investment in technology policy will be particularly impactful. Thank you for your time and consideration. I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Albritton. We look forward to asking you questions on that. And now we welcome Mr. Clark.
Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify today, and thank you for passing the CHIPS and Science Act. Your work is helping to set the United States up for continued leadership in the development of transformative technologies, such as artificial intelligence. For this testimony, I will make recommendations to help the US meet the challenge of international competition, ensure better collaboration between industry, government, and academia, and grow a diverse workforce to meet the needs of our economy, all while ensuring the safe and responsible adoption of AI. My recommendations are, first, the US should fully deliver the CHIPS and Science Act and make further investments in the measurement and monitoring of AI both here and abroad. We need to know if we're in the lead, and if not, who is. Second, the US should build experimental infrastructure for the development and testing of AI systems by academic and government users, and so should be ambitious in how it supports the proposed national AI research resource. And third, we must prioritize the creation of test beds for AI across the country, which can be used to train a new diverse workforce in the art of assessing and deploying AI systems. The US today enjoys an enviable position in AI. We have a strong academic base, a thriving commercial sector, and this hearing is an example, a government that cares about how to support the industry. AI systems have already made it out of the lab and are being used in the world. GitHub, a subsidiary of Microsoft, recently developed a tool called Copilot, a spell checker for code. It helps programmers program better, and those that use Copilot are 50% faster than those that don't. Researchers at Stanford have combined satellite imagery and machine learning to measure sustainable development outcomes in areas such as hunger relief, population density, and economic activity. And meanwhile, Google researchers have built translation technology for languages for which there is scarce data. And using this, they've added 24 new languages to their Translate service, letting all of us talk more to each other. And further afield, a new class of AI systems called foundation models are giving us the AI equivalent of Swiss Army knives, single software applications that can perform a multitude of tasks, ranging from generating text and code to helping people to create images and songs, to summarizing vast documents such as legislation. But the US can't rest on its laurels. AI is a competitive technology, and China already rivals the US in AI R&D. In 2021, China published more AI research papers than the United States and filed more patents than any other country. The US still holds the lead in the number of accepted papers and also in the number of citations its papers get, but the gap is closing. China has also proved capable of significant feats of AI engineering and research. Chinese scientists have won image recognition challenges which were previously dominated by American companies. And Chinese companies like Huawei have been the first entities to publicly replicate frontier research published by American companies. So what do? I have two specific proposals. As someone who spends their days at an AI lab, I can tell you that testing and evaluating AI systems is fundamental to realizing their commercial applications and identifying any safety issues. Therefore, we must ensure that the National Institute of Standards and Technology is able to stand up AI test beds across America so local communities can take AI systems out of the lab and vigorously test and deploy them. Secondly, we need better experimental infrastructure, here, big computers, because that's fundamental for research. For that reason, I wholeheartedly support the National AI Research Resource. If we want America to benefit from AI, then we need to make it easier for our nation's best scientists to build and experiment on it, and that's an opportunity the NAIR gives us. In closing, the US remains in a strong leadership position in the AI ecosystem, but China continues to close the gap. For the US to maintain its leadership, it should ensure adequate funding for AI research, computational infrastructure, and support for the measurement and assessment of AI systems. Ensuring strong domestic AI capabilities is paramount to protect our national security interests and ensure our continued economic competitiveness. And Senators, I used an AI to write the last few sentences of this testimony. Thank you.
Do you want to explain that?
Yes, I fed the first 2 pages of the testimony to an AI language model that Anthropic developed, and then it wrote the last paragraph, and then I added the "and senators" part myself to indicate to you it was written by an AI rather than me.
And it compiled a summation from the data points that had previously been mentioned? What do you think
It read the text and tried to predict what a good finishing conclusion would be. I also said, please write the conclusion. I tend to be polite to it as well.
Thank you. Mr. Breckenridge.
Stop that.
Right. Chairman Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today about a topic that is both timely and critical to our nation's global competitiveness and security. As many experts have highlighted, U.S. research investment has fallen woefully behind our adversaries in areas that are critical to our national security. The topic of this hearing are certainly at the top of the list if we're to sustain and protect our nation as a world leader. My perspective comes as director of the High Performance Computing Collaboratory at Mississippi State University, where I have served for the past 30 years. Our high-performance computing capacity provides support for research in artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, cybersecurity, data science, weather modeling, and other areas of applied research vital to the prosperity of the United States and the world. I am extremely proud of the national presence MSU holds in high-performance computing and the advancement of science enabled by our HPC systems. Mississippi State University has had a presence on the world's top 500 fastest computers list since 1996. At its debut in 2019, our Orion supercomputer, a 5.5 petaflops system operated in partnership with NOAA, ranked 60th in the world and 5th in U.S. academia. Much of the growth and success of Mississippi State University has enjoyed in high-performance computing can be directly attributed to the partnerships we have built with agencies such as NOAA, NSF, Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Research Service, and the DoD. With respect to international HPC capability, according to the top 500 supercomputing sites list, in 2012, the U.S. was home to more than 50% of the world's 500 fastest computers, while China had less than 14%. Today, the U.S. is home to only 23% of the world's 500 fastest computers, while China has increased their share to over 45%. Furthermore, China has significantly increased HPC funding to match or exceed the U.S. HPC capacity at the very high end. The fastest system on the latest top 500 list is located in the U.S. However, many experts are confident that China has secretly built two systems that rival the performance of the fastest U.S. system. Simply put, our adversaries are outspending us in high-performance computing. As you well know, artificial intelligence and blockchain rely heavily on HPC, and the next major advance in computing will most likely occur with quantum technology. Quantum holds the potential to solve complex problems that are unable to be solved with classical computing systems, but it also presents many challenges that must be overcome with significant investments. As an example, in the field of cybersecurity, quantum technology will place much of today's public key encryption at risk. The development of robust quantum-based encryption techniques and the use of quantum machine learning to detect and defeat novel cyber attacks are crucial. These challenges are not just in the development and maturation of hardware, but perhaps more importantly, the creation and training of a knowledgeable workforce that is able to develop new software tools and enable access to the broader scientific community without the need for understanding quantum physics. The recent passage of the CHIPS and Science Act has been heralded as a necessary action for the United States to match investment in these critical technology areas that are being heavily funded by those in the international community looking to displace the U.S. as a leader in technology development and deployment. We have certainly experienced that recently with the global chip shortage based on China dependence, and we have strong evidence that their investment in quantum and AI is clearly outpacing our investment. The CHIPS and Science Act is an excellent first step to combat this issue. I would also like to applaud the bill sections related to the EPSCoR funding and impacts it will have to vastly expand the talent base in critical fields necessary to remain a global leader. We have proven that EPSCoR institutions like MSU can be a national leader in technology fields such as high-performance computing, contributing to the advancement of necessary technology while playing a significant role in cultivating the workforce of tomorrow's innovative leaders. I offer the following recommendation for the committee to consider. To remain globally competitive and protect our future, investments such as the CHIPS and Science Act are critical to maintain our national security to mitigate being outpassed by adversary nations whose primary goal is to relegate the U.S. to a second-tier technology nation. We must utilize the expertise that exists throughout the U.S. and grow the technology workforce, not just in existing U.S. technology centers, but throughout the country. Finally, federal, state, and university partnerships will be critical to addressing these issues and being unified and developing solutions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. Bipartisan support of technology and innovation is critical to our competitiveness, and Mississippi State University stands prepared to be full participants in support of your efforts.
Thank you for that testimony. We'll now go remotely to Mr. Steve Lupin. Am I saying that correctly? Hold on a second, Mr. Lupin. Hold on 1 second. We don't have your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
Chairman Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the topic of distributed ledger systems and how the U.S. can maintain our leadership in this nascent technology. And also thank you for passing the CHIPS and Science Act. My name is Steve Lupien, and I'm a lecturer in digital assets at the University of Wyoming's College of Business and director of the university's Interdisciplinary Center for Blockchain and Digital Innovation. I specialize in the many ways that digital assets are disrupting business and financial systems. In my educational capacity, I'm often asked to explain what blockchains are And simply put, they are just a new type of database that allows multiple people to see the same information at the same time and provide trust that that information is valid. Blockchains make data unique, and that is their true power. Data on a blockchain is immutable, encrypted yet private, and allows trust to be written into code and not left to third-party intermediaries. I have been fortunate to work directly in many of the forward-looking regulation that Wyoming has enacted over the last several years. Currently, Wyoming has passed 30 bills. The first is a token taxonomy bill defining digital assets under the law. I believe both the House and Senate are looking at that presently. We are the first to map digital assets to existing UCC law, which I think is important to give businesses certainty in this space. We created a fintech sandbox to allow businesses to innovate under regulatory supervision. And probably the most important thing we did was pass groundbreaking legislation called the Special Purpose Depository Institution Bill that creates regulated banks for both U.S. dollar deposits and digital assets. Unlike many in this space, I believe that digital assets should be allowed to flourish under appropriate regulatory guardrails while allowing latitude for experimentation, development, and growth. I don't see digital assets as a threat to our existing financial and business systems, but instead as enhancements that will allow the U.S. to maintain our lead in finance and business long into the future. However, the industry is receiving mixed signals from regulators to date, and we need to align on a comprehensive regulatory framework that removes any uncertainty and allows businesses the legal clarity they need to experiment and grow this technology. Digital assets encompass much more than just cryptocurrency. They are being used for highly efficient supply chain tracking systems, frictionless and speedy payment systems, smart contracts that allow businesses to automate countless contractual agreements, and tokenization of physical assets through non-fungible tokens, NFTs, that not only allow the tokenization of intellectual property like artwork, but also innovations such as ESG tokens for energy source identification, carbon capture, carbon sequestration, and even environmental habitat protection, just to name a few. The U.S. government has just begun to fund research projects in this space, and I encourage you to explore opportunities to partner with universities more in discovering how digital assets can bring about financial and business leadership, as well as public good. Please consider the role of rural universities in this space. We are often out in front. For example, the University of Wyoming was the first Division I university to offer a degree program in blockchain, a minor in blockchain. The first to build and operate an educational Bitcoin mining lab, and the first to operate a proof-of-stake staking pool. I'm also a very strong advocate of fostering digital literacy. My center recently received funding through the Wyoming Innovation Partnership with seed funding from the American Rescue Plan to develop educational programs for Wyoming's high schools and community colleges. The goal of these programs is to introduce students to the many options available to them in STEM in general and blockchain in particular. We have a secondary goal of encouraging more girls and women in to these opportunities, as they are presently underrepresented in the workforce. And I encourage you to look at how programs such as these can be made nationwide. Just this month, the U.S. Department of Commerce published a report titled Responsible Advancement of U.S. Competitive and Digital Assets. In this report, they highlighted several categories that I support, and I ask you to do so also, including ensuring effective regulatory approaches for addressing regulatory gaps, fostering meaningful public-private engagement to ensure that digital asset stockholders across multiple business sectors and federal departments and agencies can meet regularly to discuss important issues, and sustain leadership in technological research and development that will be advanced through activities such as increased investment in government, academic, and industry-led research. I thank you all for your time and consideration and welcome any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Lupien. We'll now turn to Dr. Bob Suter. Welcome. Thank you for your presence here today.
Thank you. Chairperson Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today on behalf of the Cole Quanta Corporation. I'll start with the bottom line. Quantum technology and computing will fundamentally and profoundly change how we live and do business. It can significantly transform our economy, national security, and the daily lives of Americans. Congress and the White House have taken bold and important steps to secure our quantum future through legislation like the CHIPS and Science Act and the earlier National Quantum Initiative. We must now accelerate the development of this technology in parallel with building a robust domestic supply chain and workforce. Quantum computers are only in the early stages of development. The number of qubits, or quantum bits, that known quantum computers have today range from single digits to slightly more than 100. Practical quantum computers will need hundreds of thousands to millions of qubits for the applications we need. With quantum computing, we could develop new materials and substances, including medicines, antibiotics, and antiviral drugs, and design new, more efficient lithium batteries for transportation. We could find new alloys for aerospace, automotive, and military use. I'm confident we will get there. Now, if there's one thing we have learned repeatedly in the nearly 80 years of the modern computing era, computers get smaller and more powerful. We put computers and more of them in places we don't expect. Edge computing works with data close to where it is created or used. We could put quantum computers in cell phone towers and factories. We will want this processing capability on planes, ships, submarines, and even satellites. To achieve this, the United States must invest in scaling up the power of quantum systems while scaling down their size and cost for use at the edge. A data center-only strategy will leave us vulnerable to not having the compute resources we need where we need them. Quantum has many other applications beyond computing. Positioning, navigation, and timing, or PNT, concerns accurately locating ourselves and moving to where we need to be. News reports state that foreign powers spoof and deny GPS services to confuse and disadvantage their enemies at war. Quantum inertial sensors, including accelerometers and gyroscopes, and quantum atomic clocks, should be able to replace GPS, prevent spoofing, or act as a backup in case of local and catastrophic service failure. For commercial, defense, and intelligence, from commercial, defense, and intelligence perspectives, quantum sensors could provide these required, stable, and accurate measurements for our use on land, at sea, and in space. Quantum gravity sensors could assist in finding new energy and mining resources and detect underground facilities not apparent from visual examination. In what I think is a massive understatement, quantum is not easy. These systems require significant investment, scientific progress, engineering innovation, education, and skills development to bring into being. We should not wait. We must secure our domestic quantum supply chain for necessary enabling components such as lasers and photonic integrated circuits. Only with a reliable supply chain can the United States guarantee it can build the computers and sensors our nations need. All of this will require a significant quantum workforce, and it will not be limited to those with doctorates. We will need trained manufacturing and IT workers and software and hardware engineers. There will be many new jobs and new types of jobs. We must strengthen our education in computer science, physics, mathematics, and engineering if we expect to have a national workforce with the necessary skills to build and use quantum tech. Quantum companies need support. There's currently a shortage of federal assistance to help small quantum companies transition their promising cutting-edge technology now under development to prototyping and then to production, scale, and capability. We must strengthen and accelerate the academia, government, commercial collaboration to get practical and pervasive quantum technologies in the next several years instead of the next several decades. We require better procedural and program mechanisms to navigate the so-called valley of death stage of development, where we have scattered investment without integration into deployed systems of record. We need to do more to track, manage, and coordinate the many individual federal quantum R&D projects across the government. We must ensure gaps are understood and covered, the most promising technology is fast-tracked and well-supported, and overlaps and duplications are removed. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you, Dr. Suter. Thank you so much. Dr. Jones, thank you for being here. I look forward to your testimony.
Good morning, Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and members of the committee. It is an honor to be invited to testify on this topic today. For the record, I am Dr. Henry Jones, Director of Research Development and Scientific Entrepreneurship at the University of Southern Mississippi. Our nation has a strong base of institutions like ours that is a source of enormous competitive advantage if we make the most of our diversity. I have experienced the opportunities and the challenges presented to us by our broad mosaic of a country. As an entrepreneur and investor, I have been a part of creating companies in Silicon Valley, in Chicago, and in Mississippi and Alabama. I was educated in the public school system of my small town of 1,000 in rural South Mississippi and at a public Mississippi university before moving west to Stanford University to earn a PhD in aeronautics and astronautics. I lived in Silicon Valley during the 90s dot-com boom, inspiring me to start my first company using science developed in Mississippi State University lab, our government's Landsat 7 satellite, and create cutting-edge commercial products. So from the start of my career, I have seen what academia and government and industry can do together. What have we learned along the way? Government has had a tough time keeping up with the pace of technology. The people and processes of industry are built for competition with agile, lean, product market fit, and other concepts promoting quick iterations that are intensely customer-driven. The National Science Foundation has introduced these concepts with this I-Corps program that is spread to the National Institutes of Health and the Department of Energy. And the Department of Defense created the Hacking for Defense course at Stanford, which I've been teaching at Southern Miss. USM has implemented these innovation approaches with our partners at NOAA, preparing its 55 petabytes of data for public, customer-driven analysis. I commend this committee for supporting the new NSF Directorate for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships, or TIPS, which I believe will accelerate the impact of these and similar programs. Unexpected innovations come from unconventional connections. The latest data-driven research and innovation is finding that cross-pollination of ideas from very different fields is how great leaps forward take place. EPSCoR, the established program to stimulate competitive research, enables this type of progress by bringing together universities and their individual innovators and exposing them to unfamiliar concepts in multiple ways. Thank you, Senator Wicker, for your leadership by ensuring that EPSCoR states will receive an increase in NSF funding, which was the action needed to support continued geographic and economic diversity. In our economic system, the most important resources are customers and capital. This committee was on target with the CHIPS and Science Act, in particular the creation of regional tech hubs to promote the conditions for new concentrations of these important resources. Thanks to you, Senator Wicker, and your colleagues here, 1/3 of the 18 new hubs will include EPSCoR states as a coalition member, and that matters. I have been a Mississippi tech executive pitching for capital on Sand Hill Road, where those investors expected us to move to Silicon Valley as we grew. As these tech hubs are created, special consideration should be given to the alignment of capital pipelines from angel to venture, or else the future tech hub success stories will feel that same gravitational pull. Diversity is a national resource for resilience. The tech industry sees the competitive necessity of a diverse workforce. Conforming cultures lead to groupthink and being blindsided by unconventional ideas. Companies are seeking diversity in every dimension it can be achieved, yet are struggling in the most significant area: enough trained U.S. citizens. I am sure we have enough capable U.S. citizens, but we are missing something in the early stages of the educational pipeline. There are generational and socioeconomic barriers to STEM futures that can feel insurmountable. Our university has recently modified our computer science curriculum to incorporate industry certifications as milestones within our degree programs in case a student can't put 4 years of courses together at once. Academia has more innovation than we can do. My biggest fear in regard to securing our leadership in these technologies is that instead of applying the energy and resources to accelerate, that we coast instead. Like a race car driver seeing open road ahead but with no rearview mirror, we won't know that our competition has passed us until they are out in front. Even then, it takes time to accelerate and catch up if we can. This hearing, the CHIPS Act, EPSCoR, and the NSF TIP Directorate are the right things to do for us to accelerate now. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. We'll now go to a round of questions, and I'm going to ask my questions first and then turn it over to Senator Hickenlooper to chair the rest of the meeting, and I appreciate his leadership at the subcommittee level. Dr. Albritton, obviously one of the things we need to do to further our efforts here is the $13 billion that was authorized for NSF Foundation STEM education efforts. And as we have passed previous COMPETE acts, what's happened, circumstances, you could say, the downturn of the economy, and we didn't fully fund the competition bill. So how do we explain to people the need for these STEM dollars? And secondly, you mentioned the areas of NSF expertise you're already involved in as it relates to these computational sciences. The bill was all about translational science. It was about a new directorate to translate science faster. Can you explain what are the test bed needs of an example, the University of Washington, to actually help us combine both the workforce and the infrastructure that's needed to do the translational science?
Absolutely. I'll start with the first question about, I believe, explaining to the public about our workforce needs and how we need to fund this, if I have it right, Senator Cantwell. I think, look at me. I grew up in Louisiana. So having the opportunity as a young person to understand the excitement of science and engineering, if you look at my career, I happen to ping pong in that area. But make sure we intentionally tell young people, hey, this is for you. This is an exciting area. You can have a future. Tell their parents, too. This is for their children. They can grow and become great contributors to the U.S. economy. So I think starting early, but then making the opportunities available. We hear about college costs, for example. But as we bring in these more diverse groups of people, I think there should be funding to make sure that they succeed and prosper. So programs that support our students as they come into the universities, ensure that every one of them graduates, has interactions with industry so that they can see their future and prosper. So those are some of the...
Well, is it safe to tell our appropriator colleagues who may look at this authorization and then decide to pass that they're going to fumble the ball?
Yes, they will fumble the ball, and we've already heard from my colleagues that other countries are out in front of us. If you look at the numbers of students going into STEM, it's far lower than we need. In the state of Washington, we don't have the capacity even for the students that want to. We cannot fumble this ball. It's a global competition. We don't want to lose this competition, and we need everyone moving forward and playing on this football field, so to speak, so that we've got all the brain power in the U.S. Moving us towards the goalpost. So I think, yes, we would have fumbled badly if we don't want to invest, make sure we have good educational support systems for our students so they can see themselves succeeding in engineering and science, and then put in the necessary infrastructure and support systems so that they grow as students and they actually graduate and prosper.
So on the translational science part, what are the things that we need to get test labs established?
Yeah, so test labs. So our vision at the UW is to have open, accessible regional hubs. And let's talk about quantum. Very, very expensive technology. State-of-the-art systems are cooled to almost absolute zero, very environment sensitive. The National Quantum Initiative funded some regional large areas, but it would be truly great to have qubits for our students to come and interact with, for example, where they can learn the quantum foundations technology. They can just get really jazzed up because of what they've just done by flipping a qubit or something. So we want regional hubs that have state-of-the-art infrastructure for education, workforce development, even people that are already out beginning their careers, pulling them back to re-educate them for this new emerging area. And then also test beds that have state-of-the-art characterization tools, et cetera, so researchers don't need monumentally huge grants, but they can go into this regional facility that's easily accessible and do their wild and crazy ideas, their innovative thinking. So all of these, I think, is done as regional hubs would really lift the U.S. quantum ability.
Thank you for that. I think we're going to have to explain to our colleagues on appropriations exactly how the other aspects. There's already some foundation in the bill for us to do the test beds, but we have to show them that this is a combination of both. So thank you. Again, thank you to Senator Hickenlooper for chairing the rest of the hearing.
Great. Now we can really get started. Just kidding. I get the privilege of calling on the ranking member to ask some questions, and I'll preface that just to make sure everyone's aware that he has been one of the great champions in the U.S. Senate in terms of maintaining American leadership in innovation and science. Senator Wicker.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Hickenlooper and Madam Chair. Mr. Breckenridge, tell us, defend your statement that Mississippi State is a national leader in high-performance computing, and when this EPSCoR expansion sunsets in 2029, do you have any doubt in your mind that the leadership of this country, whoever it is at that point, will conclude that this was an excellent decision and should be made permanent?
Well, as I stated, MSU has been involved in high-performance computing for quite some time. We developed our first computing clustered system in the late 80s, well before this technology became the standard that it is today that most supercomputers are built utilizing. We've developed the software stacks that enable high-performance computing and message passing interface software middleware developed at MSU in partnership with the Department of Energy and Argonne National Laboratory. We pioneered many of the technologies that are used for high-performance computing communications from early in the 90s with MirrorNet technologies, these high bandwidth, low latency interconnects, to the standards that are viewed today in InfiniBand. MSU has been a leader in that technology. We have also excelled in the use of high-performance computing. It is not just building these systems and designing them, it's actually utilizing them to advance science. So MSU is widely viewed as the leader in grid generation, and we are doing huge amounts of work today in autonomous vehicle work and in weather modeling and cybersecurity and so many other areas that are heavily dependent upon high-performance computing.
Well, thank you, and I just wanted to give you the opportunity to say to the rest of the country, those people that are listening, and that will be reading the transcript, that you're a national leader there in the small town of Starkville, Mississippi, and not some land grant outpost that's trying to grab a little federal money. Let me turn to Dr. Jones. This EPSCoR 20% goes back to 13% or so in 2029. Are we going to be able to defend this decision? Any doubt in your mind about that?
You know, sir, I believe in the EPSCoR program like you do. I believe, sir, in the EPSCoR program like you do, so much so that I serve on a statewide EPSCoR board as an industry member. I think I was chosen because I have relationships with all of the statewide research institutions, and I knew that it was imperative that our universities work together. And we'll see the results of that collaboration, not necessarily in the technology that's developed, because that's hard to predict, especially on the front end. What we will see in the long term are new relationships, better ways to communicate, changes in policy that align incentives across the universities to work together. And so consequently, we'll have long-lasting collaborations of this these new sorts that I mentioned earlier.
I just think the results that we produce out of this increased research across the length and breadth of our country is going to be recognized. Can you take a few seconds and tell us about the virtual hubs that you mentioned in your testimony?
Sure. So one of the things that I think that we can tend to do is we operate like things have always been instead of thinking about having a vision for how they might be. And so we could connect people with their their closest geographical neighbors, because that's the way that we'd often done it in the past. But we could connect our EPSCoR neighbors because of their the nature of the expertise that is underlying their ability to put new technology together, to bring customers to the table, to create partnerships, to communicate well. So a virtual hub might not look like the hubs of the past in the same way that the response to the pandemic has allowed us to use virtual connections and to meet online as normal as it is to meet in person. We can use that same change in mindset to connect our EPSCoR states around the country.
Well, it seems that my time has expired. If the chair would indulge me, Mr. Clark, your virtual intelligence didn't have to be too smart to conclude that you were really keen on the National AI Research Resource. But it did include it in the conclusion. For those of us who didn't make an A in kitty chemistry and majored in the liberal arts instead, can you help us understand why that's so important and what it is?
Absolutely, Senator.
In minus 1 minute.
Yes. The National AI Research Resource is an attempt to create a shared infrastructure, a big computer that academics around America can access to put them on a level playing field with the private sector. One of the ways that we hire people at my company, Anthropic, is we find people from Tier 1 research universities, and one of the incentives we can offer them to join us is we have more computers than them. And I don't think we should necessarily have more computers than MIT or Stanford or Harvard or really any large-scale research university. I think that is why you lose academics and you lose the teaching base. So we need to do something to keep these people there and let them do experiments close to the ones being done in industry. And then we can all learn from their insights.
Thank you, and thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Again, I want to thank you all. Already, I think you have displayed a lot of the rationale behind why we were so excited to get you all together here. I want to start with Dr. Suter, and there are a number of hubs for quantum computing. CU Boulder and NIST have had a partnership dating back to the 1960s and put together the JILA. Obviously, we're going to need, one of the benefits of those partnerships is helping create the workforce. I think almost all of you have alluded to the importance of maintaining a diverse and qualified workforce. How can we expand workforce and educational opportunities in quantum computing? We've heard about the expense of creating these hubs. And what can we learn from the success of CU Boulder's ecosystem in that regard?
I believe there are two main points to make there. And so first, starting with Boulder. There was tremendous insight, as you said, in the 1960s between the government through NIST and CU Boulder to build JILA, which was actually originally about astronomy, but is now the most precise atomic clock in the world is in Boulder, Colorado, developed there. So a tremendous amount of core science there. That spills over, of course, into the education, many opportunities for undergraduates and graduates. But then companies come out of that. There was a celebration yesterday of a startup company that was founded by people originally at Jello. So these three axes of academia, government, eventually leading to commercial success. Now, the other example is the Colorado School of Mines, which recently put together a program on quantum engineering. We hear a lot about quantum information theory and quantum science. We should talk much more about quantum engineering because that's translating it to implementation. It's a multidisciplinary program. It's mathematics, it's physics, it's computer science as well. We have to create very practical and complete systems that work. As odd as it may seem, we can distribute our investments, but ultimately we need working systems. And we need people who can use them. As I said in my statement, there are going to be many new types of jobs that we don't even know the names of yet. Quantum computing will go beyond classical computing. So these jobs are not simply replacing what we have already. We're going to need the tens of thousands of new jobs on top of everything we have now.
Great, great. I appreciate that. And I have more questions, but I'm going to rotate my way. I at least will be here for a second round of questions. I can guarantee you all that. Dr. Clark, experts have said that there are up to 21 different standards of fairness in terms of trying to work through this in regards to artificial intelligence. Public and private sector entities often build their custom processes as a competitive advantage to ensure fairness in a particular domain. How can we start beginning to aggregate, to concentrate around agreed common definitions of what fairness, and fairness is one of the most closely held moral values among most Americans. Why is it so important that policymakers start to align fairness policies?
Thank you, Senator. There is a good example already to emulate in work that NIST does today. It has a test called the Facial Recognition Vendor Test, which tests out facial recognition systems along a whole bunch of axes of tests for fairness and bias. And what NIST did is took a whole bunch of different industry standards and approaches in academia and industry and pushed them together into one test that it worked on in partnership with a bunch of people. And we need to do something similar for AI, where we need to find a way to take all of the thinking happening in academia and industry and find a central place where we can work through these issues and arrive at a test or set of tests that we feel is fair and representative. I'd love for there to be a race to the top on fairness in industry, and I think we can unlock that if we create this kind of test.
Yeah, well, you and me both. Let's see, I was going to have ask, where was that question? Dr. Jones. The AI-powered smartphones features digital assistance, real-time translation, a lot of those things. In the future, AI is going to need more R&D to incorporate context relevant to the task at hand. What are some other examples of functions that AI could better perform if it could better understand the intentions, the tone, the cultural cues behind a voice command?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that maybe, frankly, Mr. Clark might be a better...
All right. I think that's fair. Now, the one thing about a truly expert staff is they will gravitate towards the right answer for a different question. I'm sure we will come back to Dr. Jones as well.
Could you just quickly restate the question?
Asking about the AI, the importance of cultural cues, tone, intentions in terms of what were some of the examples of functions that AI could do better if we could understand those cues?
Yes.
Time, voice instructions.
A way to think about this is the reason why we need more testing by a broader set of Americans is that as you build these tests, you learn how to reflect the values of a greater set of people. AI currently reflects the values of large amounts of data found on the internet and some of the companies that build it, which isn't representative of all Americans. And so we can find ways to bring a much larger set of people into the testing and evaluation of these systems, and then you can kind of bake in that cultural background knowledge so these systems are more representative and more cued to the subtleties of our particular culture.
right? And Dr. Jones, I didn't know, are you originally from, you're not from Mississippi originally?
I am actually originally from Mississippi. I had the feeling that Mr. Clark was not. And I thought that he might be best at answering that question.
Well, but I thought, again, we'll come back to this. I'm out of time, but I think the lilt to your voice, which gave away, despite all the Stanford education, gave away a Mississippi origin, that that's one of the big issues in terms of figuring out how do you get this, some sort of standardization. Anyway, I will come back in the second round and now recognize Senator Blackburn, who's with us remotely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and indeed another Mississippi voice. And I'm glad to see that we have someone from Mississippi State on the panel today. That is my alma mater, so good choice there. Mr. Breckenridge, let me come to you for our first question. Oak Ridge National Labs in Tennessee, they are home to the Frontier, which is the fastest computer in the world, and it is capable of executing 1 quintillion flops per second, and it has allowed the U.S. to enter the exascale computing era, and this is unlocking tremendous potential. We are really so proud of the team that is working on this. But if you would just touch for a moment on what supercomputing and quantum technologies will unlock, what economic and benefits that you expect to see coming from this, and then touch on the downsides, whether they're economic or otherwise, of the U.S. losing the quantum race.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, that absolutely. The number one system in the world is at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, as you indicated. The U.S. must we must put more focus into developing and giving access to these systems to a broader set of our research community. The systems that are available now to the traditional university are an order of magnitude smaller, or maybe many orders of magnitude smaller than that at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. This is a focus that we have to work on, not only from a technology standpoint, but from a workforce standpoint as well. And if you don't mind, would you repeat your second question?
Well, what are the downsides? You know, I think we know of some of the benefits, and I'm pleased that you mentioned the workforce, because since not everybody has access, like the students at University of Tennessee who are partnered with Oak Ridge and who are working Frontier, I think that that is one of the downsides. But also I want you to talk about what you see as the downsides if we lose this race, this quantum race.
Oh, losing the quantum race has a huge downsides from the national security standpoint to being able to advance technology. So I think it is something certainly we are unable to lose. It's just not an option for us.
Okay.
From the benefits of HPC and quantum, you know, those are many. Whether that is making safer vehicles or doing a better job in predicting, say, where hurricanes may impact us. This is certainly something that we're facing now. If we are able to see and develop a better model of where these hurricanes may make landfall, we could save lives and increase our responsiveness to that, and to that point, minimize the economic impacts to us as much as we can.
Well, and I think we all know that having quantum technologies will open the door for so many things with logistics, with blockchain, with cryptocurrencies, with supply chain. Mr. Suter, I want to come to you on the supply chain issue. There's been a lot of discussion about semiconductors, and we've heard about that today. We've heard about, and we're seeing some of the worst supply chain issues that we have ever had. So how is that prohibiting what your company is doing, and how severely do you see this impacting the growth in this technology sector for our country as we face these supply chain constraints?
Well, Senator, first of all, so when we speak about quantum computing, it is an integration of classical computing as well as this new technology. So any problems we may have with supply chain with classical computing, such as semiconductors, will spill over into our inability to do things with quantum. But there are some new technologies, such as photonics, photonic integrated circuits, as well as lasers. With Cold Quanta, we sometimes say we shine lasers at very tiny things, and those are being atoms. Well, we need many atoms, many qubits, ultimately tens of thousands or millions of those. We need extremely robust laser technology that we can get when we need it. We have to scale these things down. You can't have 10,000 lasers just to do a little bit of computing. So we need advanced technology and development, domestic technology on these so-called photonic integrated circuits. Think of semiconductors, but instead of pushing electrons around, we're pushing around photons of light. Many other countries have developed photonic centers. I believe the Netherlands have invested over $1 billion in photonics as well. Are we happy enough to get these sorts of essential supplies from outside our borders? So I believe a systematic examination of the different, not just quantum computing, but quantum sensing modalities. The constituent parts are necessary, identification of where they come from, and can we provide those ourselves? But for us, it's photonics and it's lasers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. Thank you. Now we'll switch to Senator Klobuchar, again remotely.
Thank you very much. Thanks for holding this hearing. Very important. My state brought the world everything from the pacemaker to the Post-it note. And like every other state, we are facing workforce issues. I know that this has come up already in the hearing. Dr. Suter, in your testimony, you mentioned that the future quantum workforce will not be limited to those with doctorates, that we need trained workers in manufacturing, IT, hardware engineering. What are some of the trained skills we're going to need in our next generation? And if you could be brief, I got a lot of questions.
First, computer science. The best classical computer scientist or software engineer could be a terrible quantum computer scientist or engineer. It is really so radically different that we have to start at the very lowest levels and in high school, for example, for this training. We must make sure that we don't just focus on the sciences, we focus on the practical. We are going to need to manufacture these components. These are new techniques, and these are the types of skills and jobs we're going to have to educate.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Clark, researchers in my home state at Mayo in Rochester have partnered with universities and data science specialists to use artificial intelligence to process incredibly complex clinical data to uncover causes of everything from cancer to childbirth options for expectant moms. In your testimony, you highlight the significant role artificial intelligence will have in improving healthcare. How can we facilitate these partnerships?
One of the best ways to facilitate partnerships here is to take out some of the complications involved in handling this very sensitive data. And the reason I've referred to the National AI Research Resource so much is it can prove to be a place where we can prototype new governance systems that are both sensitive to HIPAA, but make it easier for a broader set of researchers to access medical data, bring the data to where the large computational system is so you can train breakthrough systems and bring as many universities and hospitals together in a partnership so you can make sure that the systems you train are fair and representative and will work on different populations across America.
Very good. I think another area that actually Senator Wicker and I have a bill on this Precision Ag Connectivity Act, another area where we're going to see this, and I know you mentioned it in your testimony, Mr. Clark, is in ag, with best leveraging technologies to be able to, AI technologies, to be able to do everything from figure out how much water they need. We could save a whole bunch of water to planting and other things. So I'm not going to ask any question on that because I want to, in my remaining time, move on to a few of the challenges we have. And you, Mr. Clark, I'll ask you this. We need more transparency when it comes to the recommendation algorithms that most Americans encounter on their social media feeds every day. Senator Coons and Portman and I have teamed up on the Platform Accountability and Transparency Act to require digital platforms to give independent verified researchers access to data with appropriate privacy protections. You recommend that the government invest in the measurement and monitoring of artificial intelligence development. Can you tell us what kind of information and resources a researcher like yourself would need in order to fully evaluate how an AI system would affect users?
Thank you, Senator. The primary thing you need to do is give them access. You need to give them access to the system and the ability to run tests on it. And I'll give you just a concrete example. I work with AI systems that are made of billions of parameters, billions of things that we need to understand. Recommender algorithms these days have trillions of parameters. So the time to invest in this and bring researchers to this is right now. You need to give access to the system, you need to let them run experiments, and you need to find a way that not just companies control access to that, but researchers are able to, even if they find uncomfortable things, continue that research so we can have that discussion.
Very good. And also in your testimony, you highlight the importance of that shared public research infrastructure with the National AI Research Resource. How can supporting NAIRRs help encourage U.S. leadership in these emerging industries? And again, Senator Lummis and I actually have a bill along these lines with the social media platforms to get at some of the work that needs to be done with these companies. Could you answer that quickly, and then you can move on to my colleagues.
Yes, I'll be very brief. In my oral testimony, I compared some of these modern AI systems to Swiss Army knives. They're actually more complicated than that. They're like Swiss Army knives where you don't know all of the things the knife can do until you've built it and spent a lot of time testing it. So the reason why you need a national AI research resource is so researchers can train and develop some of these systems on par with the opaque ones in industry, then work out what all the capabilities are and which ones need sort of regulations and which ones are just very exciting and can be used in the economy.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, very good. Thank you to all the witnesses. Appreciate your work.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. And now I get to call on our ranking member. This actually started within the subcommittee, the Space and Science Subcommittee, which I chair, but I really co-chair with Senator Lummis from Wyoming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being on this committee is like a wicked indulgence because we get to ask you questions as some of the most cutting-edge, brilliant people in our country. And as I looked at your bios, I'm just extremely impressed with your capabilities. Dr. Albritton, I have a question for you that I'm going to start with, and then I want to go to Mr. Lupien, who is at the University of Wyoming. Dr. Albritton, I'm interested to hear about projects in your specialty that you're working on. You have such an impressive background.
Are you, me personally, or at the University of Washington?
Well, either or both.
So me personally, I'm a biomedical engineer, by the way, but I advocate for the entire college. And I can give a wonderful example about how AI needs more cultural context. I work on digestive diseases in the intestinal tract. Google is always offering me digestive aids and other remedies because it can't distinguish what's research and what's an actual physical problem. So that's what I do, and a lot of entrepreneurship. But my major job now is really as chief advocate for the College of Engineering. And the fabulous part is I get to learn, as you said, it's wickedly fun.
Yeah, it
I
is.
learn about quantum information. I learn about great battery storage. We have a new technology. Senator Cantwell was talking about our testbed facility called QT3 that we're trying to roll out at the University of Washington, where anyone can come in and play with a qubit. The students can. It's just amazing fun and excitement to learn about other things like our AI centers, AI for social good, really trying to make our technology benefit humankind, allow people to live better lives. It's just super fun job, so thank you.
Yeah, this is an outstanding panel and a great subject. I want to turn to Mr. Lupien. Thank you for joining us today and representing some of the cutting-edge work happening at the University of Wyoming, my alma mater. I want to start by asking you to explain distributed ledger technology and how it can be used in many different industries and sectors. And also, could you take us into what you see as the future of distributed ledger technology?
Wow, thank you, Senator. That's a very big question for a couple of minute answer. Distributed ledger technology, as I mentioned in my testimony, is really just a new type of database. Unlike my colleagues on the panel who are dealing with high-performance computing applications in quantum and AI, blockchain is actually not a high-performance computing application. It is an applied application that will touch pretty much everything that we do in our daily lives, very much like we're experiencing today with the internet. And where we're going to see the future, Senator, I believe, is how value is going to be moved much more easily electronically around the world. And, we're going to be able to move value almost instantly and with settlement finality that doesn't exist in our existing financial systems today, which are based on, netting balance sheets to move value. Well, we are going to move actual value. And where I really see the future, Senator, is how digital assets are going to drive some new technologies such as the metaverse. And, within the metaverse, which is the way I basically describe it is, kind of the internet on steroids. It's going to be an immersive use of the internet. Well, digital assets are going to drive that technology. It's how we are going to be paid within the universe. It's how we're going to buy things within the metaverse. And so I think that's the exciting part of where this is going. But blockchain technology itself is kind of in its, entering its bread and butter stage where, it will be doing a lot of things for consumers in industry and our financial services industry where we don't even realize that technology is what's driving the back of the house. So I hope that answered your question, Senator Lummis.
Thank you. And I have only 5 seconds to spare, so I will yield back. But if there's another round, I find this a fascinating panel, and I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here.
I suspect there will be I know there'll be a second round because I'm not leaving. Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been wonderful hearing all my colleagues boast about the incredible assets in their states. I certainly don't want to pass on my opportunity to recognize that the University of Wisconsin-Madison was the first university in the country to establish a professional master's program in quantum computing. We also are home in the state to a now Hewlett-Packard Enterprises Cray, which has been very involved in supercomputing and exascale supercomputers and we hope will have a role, a very prominent role, as we imagine and move to quantum. So I wanted to start, by the way, recognizing Dr. Suter that Cold Quanta has a Madison, Wisconsin office, and we're very pleased to be host of that. What I wanted to start with is, given the passage of the CHIPS and Science Act, and there's lots of references to appropriations continuing that drive. I will say I'm one of the appropriator members of the Commerce Committee, so I'm listening very carefully to that. But there's this momentum federally to accelerate quantum tech transition through how can we have it go through the valley of death, as you were describing in your testimony, and into commercialization. What sort of, how can we use the opportunity of this momentum right now?
We, let me reiterate, we were very happy to be in Madison. When CoQuanta decided to, in fact, start its quantum computing effort 4 years ago, we turned to Dr. Mark Safman in the physics department. We have about 25 employees there, many of whom were trained at University of Wisconsin as well. So it's been a great asset for us. When we talk about new technologies, they're often created by small companies. Yes, some of the big ones invest, sometimes startups. Unfortunately, 90% of all startups fail. And I keep researching this number year after year, and it keeps coming up to 90% of all startups fail. And so one fundamental question is, are we willing to let 90% of all the great new technology, particularly in quantum technology, which I think we can all agree is necessary for our future, are we willing to have a 10% success rate of moving out of the laboratories, the academic laboratories, into commercial production? So what we do need from the government is support for longer-term investment to keep these companies going, to get them to partner with other smaller companies, to systematically evolve this technology into something that works, that's a good thing, but that we can manufacture, which is often a very different question as well. So this is that valley of death that I spoke about, to go from great idea to actually manufacturing and selling hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. And that's where we need help from the government.
Yeah. In a number of these cases, the government will be the ultimate consumer, I would imagine. Think of the various examples that have been given in weather prediction or defense applications, communications. So, you know, that is certainly an opportunity. Let me continue on. In 2017, China demonstrated an ability to utilize what is called a quantum repeater to distribute information across great distances between Earth and space. This technology will eventually enable secure transmission of information not susceptible to eavesdropping. And in reality, China is likely much more advanced in this space than their published work might suggest. Unfortunately, competing with China is not only going to be just about achieving the next technological breakthrough or demonstration. We have to ensure that we also have the organic manufacturing base available to support large-scale commercialization for technologies that have serious security implications, like quantum networking, but also for quantum sensing that will be key for a future GPS and satellite architectures. So Dr. Suter, what areas of the industrial base do we need to be focusing on for the raw components and material that we'll need to maintain a future quantum manufacturing edge over China?
As we've spoken about quantum computing, we have focused on the processing. So that's like thinking of your laptop and just thinking of the processor, but not the data. The data is critical, and that's what comes from quantum sensors. That is what's transmitted in quantum networks. So for one, I think we need to turn around a lot of our considerations and look at a data-first view of what we are doing with quantum. In the case of quantum networking, the repeaters, we need quantum memory, something which we really do not know how to do very well at all. So as we go through and look at all the quantum technologies, such as memory, what sorts of quantum technologies might be best suited for creating memory so we can get the type of secure communication that you mentioned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin. Now we'll have questions, and for those of you who haven't been closely following the processes of the Senate, Senator Young was, I think it's fair to say, the principal moving force behind the CHIPS Plus Science Act and helped begin it, would not let it go, continued to push it various times. It got tied up. He was relentless.
Well, thank you, Chairman. That's kind, and I did want to be here for this panel. I thank all of you for your work and for your presence here so that we might have an opportunity to discuss the CHIPS and Science Act, which we think can significantly further our position as it relates to American leadership in emerging technologies. That, of course, will be vital to our national security and our economic health in the future. One of the key provisions in the CHIPS and Science Act is the regional tech hub provision. This will activate underutilized and, in some respects, overlooked regions around the country and support the innovation of critical emerging tech areas like quantum and artificial intelligence and some other key areas. My state, Indiana, is going to benefit enormously from the establishment of these tech hubs that will bring together a wide array of stakeholders. It's really why it's so important that we're not only celebrate the passage of this landmark bill, as a number are, but continue to focus on its implementation and fund key provisions such as the regional tech hub provisions. I'll just ask Mr. Clark, sir, why is it important to your mind that we fully fund the CHIPS and Science Act, and how will it directly impact the work that you're doing on artificial intelligence?
Thank you, Senator. It will impact me in two ways. One, it gives the ability to create much more ways to test and assess AI systems for both economic capabilities and safety issues. We DIY a lot of our own evals at my company, and we try and make those public, but it's hard to sometimes. If we can have more evals that are public, it unleashes more companies to build more stuff using AI and creates a huge asset. And the second way is that it can allow us to fund more ambitious infrastructure in the public sector so academics can do more impactful work.
Thank you for that. Dr. Souter, I know you can attest to how the private sector is putting significant resources and sweat equity into the development of quantum computing. Many Americans view quantum as just another pie in the sky, Silicon Valley buzzword that's never really going to impact their lives in any positive way. Can you discuss why, in fact, it's the opposite, and maybe elaborate on the many ways quantum technology is going to impact all of our lives moving forward?
Let me give two examples where I think many Americans, many people around the world are already using quantum. For people who have ever had a knee or a shoulder injury and have gotten an MRI, that's quantum technology. It's higher resolution and usually much safer than X-rays. That technology was developed originally in the United States going back to the 1940s. So people haven't realized they've been doing that. But even more common is GPS. We have quantum atomic clocks in satellites right now that not only give us precision location, and just as we drive, as I got here this morning, walked here this morning, but they give us highly reliable timestamps that we use in high-speed networking situations. If you've gone to an ATM and you see the little printout there of what time it is, that comes from GPS, that comes from quantum as well. So in many ways, quantum is already part of our lives, and it will become increasingly more so.
Those are powerful examples, and in your testimony, you note that through the CHIPS and Science Act, in the National Quantum Initiative, the federal government's already taken some important steps to secure our quantum future. But as you mentioned, there's more that needs to be done. What more can the federal government do? What more should we do to ensure the U.S. wins the global quantum race?
Well, I do believe it comes down to talent, and it comes down to skills, ultimately. There has to be somebody that develops this technology. There has to be somebody to use the technology efficiently. So we have to ensure, one way or another, either we can train the people we have, or we can get them. Quantum talent is spread around the world, including with many of our allied nations. For example, the Five Eyes countries as well. So I do think we have opportunities to look beyond our borders to get the talent we need to evolve this the way we must.
That's good. And so my constituents who might be watching this would be encouraged to know that the CHIPS and Science Act actually creates some mechanisms and can accommodate crowding in talent and treasure from our closest allies in developing things like the field of quantum. So thank you again all for being here. Chairman?
Excellent questions. And I think that it does bear just a moment of diversion on the issue around the workforce and immigration. And I think that one of the unique advantages we have in the rivalry, the competition with China, with countries all around the globe, is that as the leader of the free world, we are recognized for the group of freedoms that we sometimes take for advantage and yet make us a very attractive destination for highly skilled scientists from all over the world. And I think it'd be interesting just to take a moment off and just to ask each of you how you look at that. I want to make sure that I get you each on the record saying, yes, we need to look at trying to attract and welcome, really welcome talent. And by that, by welcoming, I mean they don't come just for a year or two, that they get to help be part of our ecosystem on a longer term. Dr. Albritton, why don't you start?
I think we need all the talent that we can get. I think you can look at any of the universities in the U.S. and see that the talent comes from across the world, not just locally or even within the U.S. Many of the companies we're talking about, their founders are from out of the U.S. but have found homes in the U.S. So being an open and a welcoming space, I think, gives us a technological advantage that we can capitalize so that we have a brain collective in the U.S. We not only educate our own brain power, but we also pull it in, and we'll be richer and more diverse, and I think more productive as a result.
As a recently naturalized American citizen, I really care about this. 43% of the people at our company come from outside America. They are the best and brightest. And the thing that breaks my heart is that we put a huge amount of resources into giving them a path to stay here, and sometimes it's just difficult, and they have to go home. I wish that we could give a path to everyone.
I appreciate that.
Yes, and being at a university, we certainly see a diverse level of students that are here. We absolutely need the smartest people, and there is quite a supply of talented individuals in the U.S. even, though, that we're not reaching out to. I think there's opportunities for us to improve the interest and desire to participate in STEM fields.
Yep.
So I would add, in addition to, I would say, the university considerations, Cole Quanta is already an international company at 200. We have an office in the UK in Oxford. We have terrific skills, so we get to augment what we do at the University of Colorado, the University of Chicago, the University of Wisconsin, with Oxford University as well. So these types of international partnerships, so we can achieve our goals, are extremely important. So yes, by all means, bring the talent here, but let's use the talent where it exists to get to where we need to be.
Indeed, we have no monopoly on intelligence and drive and an inherent desire to be successful and change the world. And I think, just as you said, Senator, that is an enormous competitive advantage for us. And how awesome is it that Mr. Clark is a fellow U.S. citizen with me to sit here and testify in this location on this topic. And he is just as wholeheartedly in favor of a strong America as those of us who were born here.
My grandfather used to say oftentimes the adopted child is more passionate about their parents than the natural born. Mr. Lupiens, do you want to?
Yes, thank you, Senator. You know, I think I share my view of my colleagues. Technology has made the world a much smaller place. But I think what we need to do is not only look to bring individual talent, but by putting forward smart regulation, companies want to be in the United States. And I think we want to create a welcoming environment to not only bring individual talent, but to bring companies here as well.
Great, point well made. Thank you for that. All right, now I'm going to shift back to, in case you didn't notice, we've been rotating Democrat, Republican to make sure this hearing is bipartisan as much as humanly possible. Senator Rosen is one of the few, maybe the only senator who's actually created software and probably understands more about technology than most of us. Senator Rosen.
Oh, well, I think there's a lot of smart, I thank you for that. There's a lot of smart people here. I just wrote computer code for a living, so maybe I do have a certain knowledge, but you're a scientist as well, and there's other engineers, and but I appreciate that. And of course, thank you for chairing, and thank you for everyone for holding this important here, for the witnesses for being here. And as I'm listening to you speak about what we need, creative and talented individuals that's going to build our workforce, people to do the work of the 21st century. We're past the CHIPS and Science Act. We have the bipartisan infrastructure law. We're going to need talented, creative people to do so many things. But today I want to talk about the talented and creative people that we're going to need to help work on artificial intelligence applications for cybersecurity, because according to Acumen Research and Consulting, the global market for security products with artificial intelligence, well, it's expected to reach over $133 billion by 2030. We've talked about this today, AI technology rapidly evolving. It's essential we dedicate research to understanding the full advantages of what AI can do, and of course what it can't do, and its risks and its applications for cybersecurity. And we want to be sure all industries have access to this information and technology so they can responsibly plan. We'll speak here about cyber attacks, especially to our AI-related tools. So Mr. Clark, how can enabled tools, well, they can be used to strengthen our cybersecurity posture across industries. And then on the same hand, in what ways does AI fall short as a cybersecurity solution?
Today, AI systems have started to be able to understand code. They can write and generate code, and you could use that to, in the same way I could spot a sentence that has poor grammar using a language AI, I could spot code that has bugs in it using a code AI. So we're right at the beginning of really, really exciting and useful capabilities here. However, when I wrote my oral testimony using a language AI, I checked what it wrote before I said it to the assembled senators. And so these kind of applications for cyber defense are going to require people working with systems in partnership and really, really vigorous and well-funded testing to find out if these systems can be truly relied upon. Because in a cyber context, you absolutely don't want something to, for lack of a term, wing it. Thank you.
Right. No, I agree. Computers are very good at either or. It's this or not this. If all the algorithms, it's greater than, less than, they're binary. And so I think you're right, where we have to have the human component. And that's going to get us to the human component, builds upon STEM and cyber workforce shortage. We know we have to grow our STEM workforce, our cyber workforce across the board. We have 700,000 positions that are open across the country. I have bipartisan legislation with Senator Blackburn to invest in cybersecurity apprenticeships. Senator Capito and I have launched the Women in STEM Caucus to bring more women into these wonderfully creative STEM jobs. Worked on a Rural Bipartisan STEM Education Act. Of course, we know the CHIPS and Science Act, but there is just so much more to do. So, Dr. Albritton, how can the federal government work better with, I would say, creating maybe apprenticeship programs, perhaps certificate programs, 2-year, 4-year degrees across the spectrum. We need all kinds of folks in this realm. How do you work better to potentiate and create this creative new workforce we're going to need, and bring in girls in underrepresented communities?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things we need is long-term stable investment in building the number of educators we have and the diversity of educators that work with our students to show them the excitement. I think investment, we can't always think about the next 6-term payoff, but what will pay off in 5 and 10 years. And I often think when we think about education, we're starting at an early age, maybe high school, maybe elementary school. So I think it's having staying power and being willing to invest over time so that you can reap the rewards at some later time. And a lot of research is like that. So patience, I guess, is one of the best ways to do it, and invest long-term, stable investment in education.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think that when you excite kids in elementary school about learning about robotics or computing or science in general, even growing plants, whatever it is, they can learn about biology, geology, computers, and they learn to internalize that at a young age. Very important. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Great. And I think we have a couple senators coming. But since they're not here, I'll just go ahead and begin with my second round and hope I can slip in a question or two. Mr. Breckenridge, you lead a center with high-performance computing. Obviously, understand a lot of the limitations to how we make sure that these technologies have broad and equitable access across the country. We've talked about that a little bit. Several people have talked about that, but you as well in your opening statement. And the needs of the diverse workforce. How is access to supercomputing, as it's just now reaching more research institutions, how can we promote that equitable access and make sure that emerging technologies like quantum computing are getting the maximum benefit from all over the country in terms of how we build out the engineering that Dr. Suter talked about?
Sure. So high-performance computing is becoming ubiquitous. Most research universities, maybe even all research universities, have high-performance computing assets there. They may be large, they may be small, but it gives them the ability to utilize those assets. I think we've got to do the same thing with emerging technologies, whether that's quantum or other areas that allows the faculty member, the researcher, the student to think of new and novel techniques and technologies, and without having that immediate access, it's really limiting.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, I'm not done with my second round. I'm just taking a short hiatus. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Chairman Hagglesworth. Thank you for taking a little hiatus for me. Mr. Clark, in your written testimony, you discussed the importance of prioritizing the development of resources for testing, evaluation, and benchmarking artificial intelligence systems. In Michigan, we're the home of the auto industry and have been investing significant resources into AI systems to pilot autonomous vehicles that will be able to drive through complex city environments without a human driver. But the secret to all of that is AI systems that are able to pilot and these automobiles and handle the massive amount of data coming in from all of the sensors. It's been described to me that self-driving cars is basically the moonshot for AI. When AI is able to do that, AI has really proven itself to be able to do all sorts of things that will transform industry in meaningful ways. So I would like you to discuss some of the existing barriers to testing, evaluating, and benchmarking of AI, and what resources do you think we will need to overcome these obstacles?
Thank you, Senator. This is a matter close to my personal interest. An area that's crucial to doing self-driving cars well is very large-scale, high-fidelity simulators. You need to simulate not just the cities that you're trying to drive your cars around, but but you also need to simulate people in the cities, weather conditions, all kinds of variation, and that takes resources, and specifically it takes computational power. So the more that we can give researchers access to large amounts of computation to run high-fidelity simulations, the better we can train these vehicles. That's a fundamental blocker.
Well, thank you. And another question for you, Mr. Clark. While we know that AI can deliver some substantial benefits to society, I'm also concerned that AI will create some significant new dynamics when it comes to cybersecurity, providing certainly increased speed and agility for both our network defenders, but unfortunately also for our adversaries when it comes to cyber security. So how should we be thinking ahead about ways to continue to improve cybersecurity as advances in AI continue to march forward?
We can take AI systems and pair them with human experts who will kind of teach the AI systems about how to secure cyber infrastructure. And you can think of it as like creating a digital immune system for our networks. AI model that constantly watches networks and watches for suspicious activity and tries to actively heal them and repair them. Additionally, we do need to invest in analysis of what's going on abroad. Other groups are harnessing this stuff for not just defense, but offensive purposes. And if we don't have a very clear and calibrated sense of where those capabilities are, we could get surprised, which is not what any of us want.
No, absolutely not. We need to lean forward aggressively in that area. I appreciate that answer. Dr. Suter, in May, the Biden administration issued a national security memorandum requiring more proactive engagement with critical infrastructure owners and operators to ease the migration of our computer systems from today's standard encryption algorithms to quantum resistance cryptography. So my question to you is, what do you see as the key challenges for the private sector in this migration?
I think even if we don't mention the word quantum, it can take up to 10 years, for example, for a bank to move to a new cryptographic protocol. It's a lot of work. It touches many different parts of their systems. So even if quantum computers today cannot break encryption, if they can do it in 10 or 15 or 20 years, it's a significant problem. And so it is something that people have to look at and do a real evaluation. What sort of cryptographic profiles, techniques do they use today? Are they RSA? Are they elliptic curve, for example? When might those be broken, and what should they put in place to be safe about that? I might also add there are export control issues concerning this, which is where do we think quantum computers might be able to break crypto, and what should we do about that with respect to export controls? There's been some very solid work there to define the sweet spot to maintain competition, development of the technologies, while still protect national security.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Hickenlooper.
Great. I have been told that they're holding a vote open for me on the Senate floor. I'm the last person to vote. So I'm going to ask one last question of Dr. Albritton, and I'm not going to get to come hang out, which is usually my favorite part once we've gotten all this out on the table. Chew it over for another 10 or 15 minutes. As you try to leave, I would normally restrain you, at least do my best. Dr. Albritton, we talked about fairness a little bit with AI, but trustworthiness, I think, is another issue that we keep hearing about more and more. The trustworthy AI systems are more fair, more transparent, more explainable, more robust, I think, in many cases. As requirements for AI systems become stricter, what advantages could American companies see if they continue, if we continue to make sure we lead the world in making AI trustworthy?
I think the advantages are unbounded. I mean, you could go and be confident that no matter what your race or sex, the facial recognition programs will treat you equivalent to everybody else. When you apply for a job, you'll get the best candidate. You will not have a biased AI program maybe selecting for certain attributes. So I think it's a more equitable, a more diverse, and a more economically productive world if we can do that. because we will have everyone playing on a level playing field, and everyone will have a chance. It's a world now, we've heard about all the great competition. We've got to have everyone having a chance, no matter what your background, what your other demographics are, your economics, et cetera. And I think a more fair AI will give us all those things we need. So economically, the U.S. is far, far better off with fairer systems in my mind.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I think you've all, in different ways, played a role in creating that the constantly improving sense of fairness and trustworthiness. Thank you each, Dr. Albritton, Mr. Clark, Mr. Breckenridge, Dr. Suter, Dr. Jones, Mr. Lupien. I think I have questions for each of you that will go into the written, put them in writing to you. I guess this will then end today. You're off the hook now. Conclude our hearing for today. I'd like to thank all my Senate colleagues, and especially our witnesses for this, I think, truly fascinating discussion. I think the best hearings are the ones where you will come away from it and you've got more thoughts in your head than you came in with. And I think that is certainly true to maximum effect today. The hearing record will remain open for questions for 2 weeks until October 13th, 2022. Any senator who'd like to submit questions for the record may do so until then. We ask that witnesses submit their responses to those questions by October 27th, 2022. There will be harsh penalties if, no, I'm just kidding. With that, this committee is adjourned.